Hi guys, so today we are going to start off with activity based costing. That is going to be our first chapter for F5. So activity based costing is basically considered to be a modern technique to deal with overheads. Now the question arises that okay, if that is the modern technique, then what was the past technique? What was the older technique? So the older technique was absorption costing. I'm writing a few points on the screen that I would want you to note down before we move on. So ABC is defined as a modern technique to deal with overheads. Moving on, then we have the steps that we need to note down for absorption costing, which was the older technique. And then we have the steps for ABC costing as well. So for the older technique, there were 4 steps. That was allocation, apportionment, reapportionment, and then we had the 4th one, absorption. Now the question arises that why are we moving from absorption costing to activity based costing? In this case, if we look at the 4 techniques of absorption costing, we do not have any issue in the first 3 steps, but the 4th step says, that is absorption, it says that we are going to take total overheads and then we are going to divide it by either labor hours or machine hours. This is a bit unfair. Why? Because first of all the overheads of an organization are not being driven by one certain activity. Let's consider that your company is more labor oriented, but by it being more labor oriented, it does not mean that it does not have machines. It does have machines, but it has fewer machines. But let's say energy cost, how is that arising? That is arising because of the usage of machines. Most of the electricity cost is arising because of the usage of machines. So machine hours are also a part of it. But absorption says that no, add all the overheads together and then divide it either by labor hours or by machine hours, which is not the correct format to do. Why? Because companies have both labor and machines involved, which is why overheads are being driven by both labor hours and machine hours. You can't just assume that all the overheads are being driven by either labor hours or by machine hours. Okay, which is why we move towards the newer technique, that is activity based costing. I am just writing the short form ABC. So what is the step for ABC? That we are going to discuss through an example question. Let's look at the question. Now if you see, there are 2 windows being shown. On the left is the example question and on the right is our note where we were discussing things. Now about the new technique of ABC, the first step is that we are going to eliminate totality concept. What is totality, we are not going to consider total overheads. Rather, we are going to consider cost pools. Secondly, for each cost pool, you would have an appropriate cost driver. What is a cost driver? The reason why a cost is being incurred, which means that when each cost pool has a cost driver, then there are going to be multiple multiple overhead absorption rates. In absorption costing, there was only one overhead absorption rate, which was a factory wide overhead absorption rate. But in ABC, there are multiple overhead absorption rates because of multiple cost pools. Okay, and then step 4 is to charge each overhead to its respective product separately. Okay, this is the criteria that we are going to be using. Now moving on to the example. If you look at the example, it says suppose that Q plant manufactures 4 products W, X, Y and Z. Output and cost data for the period just ended are as follows. Output units are 10, 10, 100, 100. There are 4 products basically. So for W there are 10, for X there are 10, for Y there are 100, and then for Z there are 100. Number of production runs in the period are 2, 2, 5, 5, which means in total those are 14. Material cost per unit are 20, 80, 20, 80, and direct labor hours per unit are 1313, and even machine hours per unit are 1313. They have mentioned that direct labor cost per hour is $5. Overhead costs are as follows. Now short run variable costs are given 3080, setup costs are given 10920, production and scheduling costs are 9100, material handling costs are 7700, which makes a total of 30,800. They want you to compute absorption costing and ABC, basically for product costs. They want you to use absorption costing and ABC. Now if you look at the overheads, 30,800 is the total which you will be using for absorption costing. But if you see, there are individual overhead cost pools given to you. So these are for activity based costing. Now let's move towards solving the question. So part A, was to do absorption costing. Now if you remember from the very start, I have emphasized on that absorption costing and ABC costing only prefers and only works on overheads. I have never mentioned that both of these techniques work on material costs. I have never mentioned that both of these techniques work on labor cost. I have only mentioned that they are specifically used to work on overhead costs, which is why material and labor cost computation is going to be exactly the same in both the cases. So material cost was 20 for W and 10 units. We are going to do the totals later on. Let's first do the working. Then 20 into 100 and then 80 into 100. I hope it is clear. We are just simply multiplying the material cost per unit with the output units. Like I mentioned, I'm going to look at the totals later on. Right now I'm not computing the totals, I'm just presenting the working in the bracket. Labor cost, how will you compute it? Labor hour for W was 1, so 1 labor hour, but this was per unit, so I am going to multiply it by the number of units to get the total labor hours that were worked, and then I am going to multiply it by 5, which was the labor cost. Same for X, 3 into 10 into 5, 1 into 100 into 5, 3 into 100 into 5. Okay. Next we have is overheads. Now for overheads you need to compute the OAR, so I am just doing the working over here. Total overheads were 30,800. Now you can either use direct labor hours or you can either use machine hours. I am considering machine hours. In every question they provide you the basis, but in this question they haven't provided you the basis. But if you look carefully, it does not matter, because machine hours per unit are also exactly the same and direct labor hours per unit are also exactly the same. It's 1313 for both, so it does not matter. Totals are going to be exactly the same for both of them. Now how to compute the totals? So let's do it over here. 1 machine hour per unit for W into 10 units of W plus 3 into 10 for X plus 1 into 100 for Y plus 3 into 100 for Z. Oops. This is going to give you 440. Okay, 440 machine hours. So this gives you $70 per machine hour. Now once you have $70 per machine hour, you can simply just multiply the $70 into 1 in this case, because it is W. So into 1 into 10. Same is the case for X, 70 into 3 into 10, 70 into 1 into 100, this is 100, and then 70 into 3 into 100. Okay, now we have the workings. All we need to do is input our totals. So the totals are going to be 200, 800, 2000, 8000, then we have 50, 150, 500 and 1500, and then we have 700, 2100, 7000 and 21,000. When you total them together, for each product you get 950, 3050, 9500, 30,500. All of this is in dollars. Make sure you do input the currency. Don't forget to do that. In Excel, when we are going to perform it, it is going to become more easier. So the next question, the past paper question that we are going to do is going to be in Excel only. So next we have is OAR. Okay, OAR is to be computed for ABC now, which we are going to do under the heading of ABC. I told you for ABC you need to have multiple OARs. So for short run variable cost, let's first compute that. I am just writing the short form, short run variable cost 3080, and this is going to be divided by short run variable cost should be divided by either machine hours or labor hours. Since I already considered machine hours in the previous scenario, I am going to still consider machine hours over here. This is going to give me $7 per machine hour. Then we have set up cost, so that is going to be 10,920, which is going to be divided by number of production runs. Now the question arises that why are we dividing it by number of production runs? See, setup costs, production and scheduling costs, and materials handling costs, all of them are dependent on number of production runs in a period. What is number of production runs in a period? It means that in a given time, how many times did you turn on your machine, then it produced a certain amount of goods and then it stopped. So for W, the machine was turned on only 2 times and it ran its whole process and then it stopped. For X also it was run 2 times, for W it was run 5 times, and for Y it was run 5 times, and for Z also it was run 5 times. I hope this is clear. So 10,920 divided by 14 gives you 780 per production run. Make sure that you always write this, that what was the basis. Otherwise in the exam you are going to get confused because you're already under a lot of exam stress and exam pressure, that students often forget to write a lot of things, and then later they forget what basis was being used. So 7700 divided by 14 gives you 550 per production run. I hope this is clear so far. We have computed the overhead absorption rate for all 4 of them. Now I told you that for ABC and for absorption, the material and the labor cost are exactly the same, so no need to do anything except for copying it down from the above mentioned results. So 200, 800, just save your time, don't show the working again, just press is equals to and then click on that cell where you've already computed material and labor, so that in Excel it can automatically just copy it down. I'll show you how to go about it. 500 and then 1500. Now for overheads, so there's a list of overheads basically, which is why short run variable cost is going to be computed as $7 per machine hour into 1 for W into 10, then 7 into 3 into 10, 7 into 1 into 100, 7 into 3 into 100. I hope this is clear. I'm going to write the answers later on. Let's first focus on the working. Setup cost. So setup cost was 780 per production run. So for W we had 2, for X also we had 2, for Y we had 5, and for Z also we had 5. Next we have is production and scheduling cost. So that was 650 again into 2. Now you need to understand that number of production runs in the period is not per unit, this is total. Okay, so we are going to take it as it is only, which is why I divided it by 14. I did not multiply it by the number of units. It does not depend on number of units. Okay, material handling cost is 550 into 2, 550 into 2, 550 into 5, 550 into 5. So this is going to be 70, 210, 700, 2100. Then 1560, 1560, 3900, 3900, 1300, 1300, 3250, 3250. Then 1100, 1100, 2750, 2750. Okay, this is going to be totaled, and the total is going to be 4250, 5120, all in dollars, 13100 and 21500. Dollars, dollars. Make sure you always mention the currency that is being used. This is how you are going to perform your activity based costing and your absorption question. I hope all of this is clear to you guys. If there's any query, you can ask me.